Welcome, everyone. My name is Lorna Gilmore, and this is the fifth grade transition to middle school information night. And this is the ISD Equity and Family Partnership and School Counseling Department doing this presentation. So, Laura and Ina, would you mind presenting and introducing yourselves?
Should I go first? Okay.
Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ina Gangurdi. I am one of the 3 family liaisons for the district. I support the Liberty High School feeder pattern with the addition of Pacific Cascade Middle School and Cougar Mountain Middle School and Cougar Ridge Elementary. So I'm kind of a little bit all over the district. But most of my schools fall under the Liberty High School feeder pattern. And I am available and happy to meet with you, answer your questions, help you understand our system.
And my name is Laura Meserol. I am a counselor at Pacific Cascade Middle School. And I was also an elementary counselor for a few years when I first started. So I've been on kind of both sides of this transition for both the elementary and the middle school. And we're going to talk a little bit about what a middle school counselor's role is and what how we help kind of with this transition and what our job is in the middle school. So I'll save a lot of it for that. But we're glad you're here. This is an exciting transition. I know it has a lot of big feelings for everybody involved, but hopefully this information today will kind of help lay the groundwork as you start to think about what next year is going to look like.
Thank you. And so the purpose of tonight's event is to support families who might be unfamiliar with the middle school systems and programs since they attended schools outside of the United States or in other areas in the United States and private schools. So this presentation that we're doing is based on parent feedback. So I work with a group called the Family Partnership Advisory Group, and in working with them about 6 years ago, the parents told me that, when they were transitioning to 5th to 6th grade, they went to their school's middle school information event and they were very lost and confused because while the school did a great job about school course selection and options, they didn't understand the foundation information about schools in general because they were completely unaware or new to middle schools in general. So using feedback from parents who were new to the United States, we created this to really try to hit the main differences between schools in other countries and the Issaquah middle school schools, and also the differences between elementary to middle school to help with this transition process. So it is also well designed to help families in general who maybe it's been a while since they went to middle school, or they came from private school or different area in the system. The schools have changed, and in general, schools have changed a lot. So today it's to provide the foundation for when you go to the middle school's information night. So please note, this is not to replace that event. This is just to give you base information as you're going to that session, and we'll provide the dates for those sessions at the end of our presentation. One of the reasons this session is very close to my heart because I worked for 15 years as a science teacher at Issaquah Middle School. And then I took on this role after being a dean at the Issaquah Middle and elementary school. But this information is very close to my heart. And when I worked as a middle school teacher, I also did this presentation for parents, the information night in February, March, since I was a 6th grade teacher. So I can understand some of the questions you might have and the transition since I was there. And then the other way that this is close to my heart is because I also have a current 6th grade teacher right now. Yes, and if you want to check which middle school your child will be attending in the feedback form, that would be great coming up. Okay, so the current school is elementary, but it's probably a typo in the question. So if you wouldn't mind marking what school your child will be attending next year. So just a little bit background about the Issaquah School District demographics. We have 26 schools and Echo Glen, and we have 3 comprehensive high schools. Plus, we have Gibson Neck, our project-based high school. We have 6 middle schools. So all of you in the audience will be probably attending one of the 6 different middle schools in the Issaquah School District, and you're probably coming from one of the 16 elementary schools in our district. Our school district covers a very wide geographic area, which includes addresses of Bellevue, Sammamish, Newcastle, Renton, Preston, not forgetting Issaquah, of course, and unincorporated King County. So it's it's one of the largest geographically spread out school districts in the state. And as such, our bus transportation has to go all over the area to pick up our kids. And that also impacts, as you've realized in the last couple of weeks, our snow routes and our transportation for that. Okay. Our school is also extremely diverse. We have students from many different countries, families who speak many different languages. The last I checked, there were 82 different languages that parents were speaking as part of their home languages, and many different countries. I think it was 112 countries represented in our school district. So Ina and I work for the Family Partnership team, and I am actually a teacher on special assignment. I am a family partnership specialist, and the majority of my job is working with parents to help them better understand and navigate the system. I do many workshops and events such as this. I would also be doing an event in September to teach parents how to use Canvas. I do a presentation sometimes on Running Start and WANIC, presentations on high school, college financial aid, how some of you might have seen me before, at how to talk and work with their teachers at parent-teacher conferences. I do a welcome for families new coming into the kindergarten. So we do about 10 to 15 events through the course of the school year. And that was 50% of my work, and the other 50% of my work is working with school staff and with certificated and classified staff and helping them better understand and communicate with our families, because we believe that the better we can communicate and work together as partners, that's the parents and the staff, the better suited we are to support a number one person that we're trying to support, the people, our students. So we are here to remove barriers to accessing information. We have liaisons here to provide support to families. If you wouldn't mind, again, please turn off your camera because we are recording this and I'm trying to make sure no one is recorded through these sessions. We also hold events, as I said, and we provide resources. So this PowerPoint will be put on the district website under the tab called Resources, and a lot of our resources are there, including our Canvas videos and so forth. So for families, the feedback we've gotten is the transition from elementary school to middle school it's a big transition because students are going to a new building. They are learning how to get around this new building. They have to get from one class to another class by themselves. There's no lineup anymore. There are many new people. You know, for fifth graders, they've had pretty much the same building for the past 6 years, and now they're going to be seeing new people. They have 6, 7 new teachers. There are many, many new students. Every period, they're in a classroom with 25 to 32, sometimes 35 new students in that classroom. So they're exposed to many students throughout the course of their day. They have sometimes classroom expectations that are different from one class to the other. Lunch looks different. The hallways look different. The lockers, sometimes they have lockers. So it's a big difference for students. So the other big difference is from elementary to middle school, it's student independence. And we will be talking a lot about that through the course of today's presentation. Really, middle school is where it's a transition year because it's a transition to how students are learning to be independent at school, how to get to class on time, how to communicate with their teacher on their own, not really going through their parents. So the parents do less communicating with the teacher, and it's really through the student. How to manage their class schedule, their homework, how to take ownership of their academics, They're going to be having tests to do, assignments to turn in, and multiple classes to balance. So the next 3 years is a great training so that they are better prepared for high school. Because in middle school, this is one of the questions that was asked. While they do get grades, and the grades are very important, the grades do not show up on the high school transcript, and the grades are not visible to the colleges. So this is a time for students to try. This is a time for them sometimes to fail, to see what it looks like. Sometimes people are so worried about, especially parents, of letting their children fail and what that means, that they're constantly picking up pieces of their child's life, bringing homework to school in sixth and seventh grade. That is really not realistic. And then we hear from parents who have kids graduated and now in college how frustrated they are that the college is not communicating with them when their kids are failing. We hear constantly from Running Start parents how they're upset because the colleges don't tell them what's going on in the grades in their child's life. So middle school, you get all of this as parents, but how do you use this time to partner with your child? And so that is really what this is about. This is a transition year and helping your child be more independent learners. The parent will learn how to advocate and for their own learning, the parent and caregivers to coach and help their student learn and to get help as they need. So things that the caregiver and parent should be doing is to coach their child on how to talk to the teacher. One of the things that I know I did with both of my, especially with my older child, is how do you ask your teacher, what can I do to improve my grade? What can I do? How I didn't understand this, can you help me with it? So how can the student talk with the teacher? Because sometimes some students don't know how to do that. So parents are trying to model and coach their child on how to advocate for their own learning. Also, students are going to be using Canvas and Office 365 a lot if they're not doing so already in fifth grade. So parents can also help and model what that looks like. What does emailing a teacher look like? So I know for my oldest child, I would sit down and help her craft the email to help her understand what that looks like. How do you write an email? Sometimes they've never written an email. They've done a lot of texting, but they don't know how to address the teacher and how to ask the questions. So the teachers work with students also to show them how to advocate for their own learning, but really this is time to help. That was the main goal for parents and working with their child to help them advocate for their own learning. So there's also more communication between student and teacher. So this is a big transition and a schedule for big transition for students because of their schedule. So in elementary school, they only had one teacher and the same group of students all year. In middle school, they have separate classes and teachers, different students in the class. Their weekly schedule is also different, not just their daily schedule, their weekly schedule. In elementary school, they had early release on Wednesdays, but in middle school, the Wednesdays they start at 10:10 usually and end later around 3:30. In elementary school, they had specialists. In middle school, they have 6 periods, main periods, and then a homeroom, kind of a homeroom class. I believe it's now called homeroom in all the schools class also, which is about 20 minutes. So it's a big difference because they have so many different classes. In elementary school, they have multiple recesses. There is no recess in sixth grade, and for some sixth graders, that's a big change. But note that middle schools have really tried to make lunch a little bit more active, and they have foosball tables or a basketball court available or different areas available for the student. But it's a big change from having 2 recesses to only the lunch. Lunchtime is in sixth grade, they usually try to keep it as a sixth grade lunch, and also there are microwaves and the food choices are different. And then lastly, materials. In sixth grade, they had a desk where they had materials kept in the classroom on their chair. So here, and I'll be honest, my oldest daughter, she's a sophomore right now, she doesn't use the locker, but when she was in middle school at Pacific Cascade Middle School, she did use her locker. and using of a locker is very different, but most of the kids, they have to carry a lot more supplies with them in their backpack throughout the day. Um, So in this one, you can see that the student is transitioning and becoming an independent learner. They're learning how to self-advocate, to manage their daily class and study schedules, and communicating with teachers as needed. And the parent's role is to be the model, the coach, to encourage the students about asking for help and getting help from the teacher. And the big one is really to help monitor the students' progress and suggest tips or strategies on success. And we'll talk more about that when we get to the Canvas slide. Another big difference between elementary school and middle school is school communication. In elementary school, very often the teachers would send, sometimes they would send paper or an email. In middle school, everything. There's very little paper documents. There's no take-home folder. Everything is emailed to families either through weekly bulletins, or the teachers may use Canvas or Skyward to email a note to all students in their class. But there is definitely more a reliance from the staff and parents expected to be checking their email for communications from the school. Elementary schools, school announcements are usually about celebrations, and this is a big one. In middle school, they have announcements every day, and those announcements have really important reminders for students, such as the start of clubs or about sports, about different things. And so students should really be relying on that. So sometimes parents feel out of the loop because of that. So be sure that you're talking to your child as to, hey, what were the announcements like? Is there this, what's going on at the school? Also talking about announcements, not just the academics. And the announcements happen usually through in their homeroom period. So all kids are getting the announcement on the loudspeaker. The school website is also a very critical part for families because it has important information regarding clubs, meeting times, advisor names, the sports. We'll talk more about that. The bell schedule. I use my children's bell schedule site on the website all the time to get that information, the school calendar, all of that. Communication from teachers. You are now used to getting a weekly newsletter from your classroom teacher. In middle school, the emails are much more sparse. You're not going to get any newsletters. And some teachers might email you once a trimester, but it's possible that you don't get any direct emails from teachers at all. And you are doing all the checking through the Canvas site. And so the Canvas site is really your main communication form. Parent-teacher conferences also don't exist in middle schools. It's not that you can't talk to your teachers or have a meeting with them, but there's no parent-teacher date. And so you will be able to request a meeting, usually through school counselors and all the teachers. And then finally, PTSA. PTSA, I feel like in middle school and elementary school is much more visible. You saw their presence, they were on campus doing different activities. In middle school, it looks very different. And the supports that PTSA offers in middle school, some schools have walkabout, they'll help maybe with culture nights and so forth, but it also looks very different. So what schools will you be attending? So students will follow their feeder pattern. If you move and you're no longer within your school's attendance boundary, you will need to transfer school. So the main thing you need to know from students in Merlin and SciTech programs at elementary schools will now be going to their middle school based on their address. So let's say you are at the Apollo Merlin program, but you actually actually go to school or you're living in the Newcastle area, that means you'll most likely go to Cougar Mountain. Or let's say you're at the Endeavor Merlin program, but your home school actually is, let's say, Creekside. That means you will then be going to Pine Lake. Okay, so even though you might be in SciTech or Merlin program, you will be going to your middle school based on your home address. And those of you who are not in our school district yet and are in private school and just coming to our school next year, make sure you double check with the school nearby, or you can click on the attendance map webpage or to find out what middle school you will be going to. So some schools, as you can see in this map, the feeder pattern, split. So IVE, some kids go to IMS, but some students do go to Cougar Mountain. And if you're not sure which one is your middle school, you can contact your elementary school registrar and double check about that. So there are some schools where the students are split. And so for those schools, find out from your school registrar if you're unclear as to which of the two middle schools you will be attending. So moving from the elementary to middle school. So because this is all one school district, the transition is very seamless and automatic. All your paperwork from 5th grade will be moved to the high school, or the middle school, middle school, and then to the high school. Parents do not need to re-register or re-enroll for middle school if your child currently attends an ISD elementary school. You do, however, have to complete the EVP in August. Remember, every year, no matter what, you have to complete that because it's a confirmation that you are still living in the area, and there are required paperwork such as the health forms that need to be filled out. You also will have to do course selection, and I'll give you the specific dates. They start later on next month, and you will be doing course selection for your child. Transportation might change, so you need to find out about that transportation. This year, you may have a bus. If you're living within a mile from the school, you may not have a bus, or maybe this year you live so close to the school you didn't have a bus, and in next year in middle school you might have a bus. But you will verify your transportation, and then you can check your bus route information on the transportation website. School lunch balances, fines, all of that actually carries. So again, students will receive a school lunch. The lunch ID number is the same. There are actually just more options at the secondary menu. There's also more a la carte items, which in my world was a little bit problematic because kids tend to buy junk food a little bit more in middle school. But school lunch is also a seamless transition. Then highly capable. So highly capable does look different in middle school. We have a highly capable program, but it's mainly about the choices and the classes students take because it's self-select, and really highly capable is more about the supports students are getting to make sure about their social emotional well-being. But there's more information on that link, but we won't be covering too much about that right now. The last big one is if your child has a 504, an IEP, or health plan, that accommodation will also follow your child from the elementary to middle school. The 5th grade IEP teacher meets with the IEP teachers in the middle school to review information. The 504 plan, it's a plan that has accommodations for children with disabilities, but that follows through. And very often, especially for certain cases, the 504 coordinators in middle school and elementary school will talk to each other for that handoff to make sure they understand the process, just as the IEP teacher, case managers talk to each other. Same thing also with the health plans. The nurses for students with diabetes, asthma, hearing, or other health needs talk. So note that this transition, you might feel like, oh my gosh, are these things coming? But they are. It's just that behind the scenes, the counselor, the case managers, the school nurses, sometimes even the administrators are talking to each other from the two schools as the new groups of kids are coming to their school. Okay, so that information all follows. So things that also are the same is you're going to be using the same district calendar. Your school calendar will be a little bit different, but the district calendar is already posted and readily available on the district website. And the link is over here ready for you. When you get this power slide deck, you will be able to see it more in more details. The school attendance is much more critical. So my husband and I use this calendar all the time in planning our vacations and planning our break. In elementary school, I will be honest, I noticed when I was a dean that a lot of families would take 2, 3, maybe even 4 weeks off and go on long vacations, maybe go back to a home country or something. And in elementary school, it's always problematic and to lose education and learning, but it's much more problematic in middle school. So visit the school calendar as you're planning vacations, and that's one of my biggest tips to you. The year is also different. So it used to be that elementary schools had trimesters. This year they went to semesters, but the middle schools are still on trimesters, and so be aware of that. And the middle school, they will be getting a report card in Skyward. It looks very different than the elementary school report card. There will be grades on it as an ABCD. And so that's another big difference. And we'll talk about grading in another couple of slides. Schedules. So the Bell schedule is different, and you're going to be looking at the Bell schedule on the website. And as I said, the school starts later for students. In some schools, 10:10 or 10:20, depending on the school. And one thing to note is a Friday at the end of the trimester is an early dismissal day, and also the 2 last days of school, two. Normally, the last day of school is a half day, but in middle schools, it's the last 2 days of schools are early release days. And students' schedule will be available on Family Access the day before school starts, and that really depends on the school. Very often when students go to school, they have the counselors and staff have people and the volunteers who are available and giving out the child's class schedule to them. And most schools have some kind of assembly because students sometimes need help getting from class to class. Family Access is a great source of looking and finding out the period and what time the students will be going from class to class. Sometimes it'll have some information on their lunches because one of their classes will have an AB next to it to say that, oh, this child is now going to be eating lunch from this period to this period because of the way their day falls. So for example, my child usually had the lunch between fourth and this period, and so that's where their lunch fell. So a lot of this information will be shared because their lunch period is usually based as a certain and a specific time. So you'll have to look, the teachers explain all that about lunch periods to students. So the 6 classes plus homeroom, each class is approximately 50 minutes long with a 4 to 5 minute transition in between for students. That sounds like a very short time, but it's shocking how quickly kids can move. And we don't want too much time because then kids are milling in the hallway. And, we don't want them to be naughty either. We just want them to get to the next class and they can do it. My 15 years at Issaquah Middle, we were really spread out. And students, the first 5 days, it took them a while to figure out and not get lost. But once they knew their schedule, I did not have tardies anymore unless every now and then they might have been goofing off in the hallway. But you can see an example here of a Bell schedule. And all of this is posted on the website at Issaquah Middle School, Pine Lake Middle School, and what their Bell schedule looks like. Ooh, it's taking a while. But homeroom class is usually on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Okay. Sorry. And then they have elective classes on also. So the homeroom class is also where they have social emotional learning. Thank you. Sorry, my computer froze for a second. And then elective classes, more information will be presented at each of the schools around elective classes because each of the middle schools have slightly different ones. But the ones that are similar are band, chorus, orchestra, and then PE and health. So there sometimes students who are not interested in band, chorus, or orchestra take not usually a non-year-long elective, and what that elective could be will be listed on the website for the school, and all of the electives. The school district has a link, and we'll talk more about that also. Uh, so a day in the life of a child, they're going to go to their homeroom usually first, and then their other classes. The students will move each period. There's going to be a different set of classmates each period. Their class sizes will range anywhere from 24 to 35. Certain classes, especially orchestra, band, chorus, are much larger. The core classes will stay the same all year long. So they'll have the same teacher for math, science, social studies, and English language arts, which are called their core classes. Their PE teacher usually also stays the same. It's the same teacher who will teach PE and then health. And their homeroom teacher is also the same. One of the things I want to say at this point is the homeroom teacher is not the teacher that you contact if you have any questions. When Laura works on this, talks about the slide on counselor, she will talk about counselor's role. So very often parents think that the homeroom teacher is the teacher to contact if in case they have questions or concerns. It's not, it's the school counselor, and she'll talk more about that. 6 weeks into the school year, every 6 weeks, pretty much, you will get an update about their grades. And that is fantastic because it'll give you a little snapshot as to how your child is doing. And the 12 weeks is when the semester, a trimester ends, and you will get a report card in Family Access that's accessible to Family Access. But the main thing to know is Canvas constantly has students' grade in it, and it's an important tool to communicate with the teachers use to communicate with students and families. Really, teachers are using this tool primarily to communicate with students, and families are able to see that information that the teachers are sharing with that student. Laptops. So this is one of the biggest differences. All students in middle school are provided with a district issued laptop. All IST students also have an Office 365 account. This is not for the parents to use. That account is really their ID and username, and they use it frequently to complete and submit assignments. So they will submit assignments using their Office 365 account. The teachers are usually sharing folders and files, and they're sharing or sending their files to their teachers. So this is a big thing that's used to complete assignments. I know my child in high school uses a account all the time and submits all her essays and written projects to her teachers using that, and also submitting them through Canvas. So you're submitting assignments through Canvas. Many of the school textbooks are also online. So the good news is, honestly, from when I used to teach, we didn't have Canvas. Now kids are accessing their textbooks online. So their backpacks are heavy because of their computers, but not as heavy as when they were carrying 2 textbooks to school, right? And so that's one of the reasons why some kids don't use their lockers as much also, because the textbooks, most textbooks are online, and students use it by accessing it usually through their Canvas account. So the ID and all of that stuff is automatically in there. It's an app that is embedded in their Canvas account. Students need to take these laptops to school fully charged. That is a huge issue. Many students have. And also the ISD recommends that students use the school issued laptops, because the school issued laptops have software so that the teachers can ensure the students are not kind of off task, but it's also to access, and also teachers cannot really help students when there are problems with their laptops if it's not a district issued laptop.
Yeah, Lorna, can I just jump in really quick because I had that question too? Just to clarify, it's really more required now than it is just a recommendation that students need to use the ISD laptops. There may be an exception here and there for maybe an IEP or something along those lines, but really the majority of students need to be using the ISD laptops for those reasons. It's just more cohesive and allows teachers to teach more effectively and allows students to know exactly the systems, use the same systems across the board for turning work in, for troubleshooting, things along those lines. So I just wanted to make sure that was really clear because I had that question a couple of times too.
Yeah, and a lot of parents are very concerned about security, and that's one of the reasons we ask students in middle school to use their district issued laptop, because we have security on there. And then we also have a program called Securely that I, as a parent, for my children, I get an email telling me what websites my kids have looked at using them. So there are safeguards that the district has put in. Can you get an actual hard copy of the textbook? It depends of the textbook, but yes, my children came home with textbooks in the beginning of the school year, so that some kids just like paper, and they do have that. And so they have actual textbook also. The ISD laptops definitely don't allow kids to use YouTube, including sometimes teachers. And so I know that used to be an issue because we couldn't show some YouTube educational videos or watch those if a teacher wanted the kid to look at that. So they have limits on YouTube also. So we have lots of filters where a lot of different sites kids cannot get onto on their computer. So they have a firewall so students cannot go to different websites, and those are blocked. Laura, do you want to add any more about that? You might see more nowadays with students.
Yeah, I think the Securely piece that was added this year for district in terms of notifying parents too around usage has been huge. That was one of the issues we had with them first starting going one-to-one last year. So that's been really helpful. And I think too, just if you're having concerns about your students' use of their laptop at home or things like that, then that's something you can reach out to the school about so that we can kind of problem solve that. And teachers will reach out too if they're seeing a student really struggling with their use of a laptop, or if they're not doing what they should be doing in class, like they have their monitoring software, they're going to be reaching out to parents too if it's becoming a habit or a pattern in class for that. So it is a new learning for a lot of students, but I think the more we have students kind of using them in elementary school and coming up, the more they're used to it.
And that's one of the things I also want to say. In elementary school, we start doing digital citizenship in very young grades, and teachers are teaching students how to use a laptop, how to access their Office 365, use their password, how to take care of a laptop, because they really are responsible for it. They're going to be carrying this back and forth. They're going to be lugging it to sixth periods. It is a big deal. And so, a lot of parents can be nervous about fat kids owning their own laptop and be responsible for that. But honestly, that is part of the whole middle school to high school transition, students having more responsibility and individual responsibility for their learning and how they use these resources that they're going to be using for the rest of their lives. So the other big thing is with the laptop comes Canvas. Canvas is the learning management system that is used in all Issaquah middle and high schools, except for Gibson. All course information, grades, syllabus, expectations for teachers is posted on Canvas. Canvas is really amazing. Like when you get into the main page of the teacher, you can see the syllabus, know exactly what's going to be happening. So, pretty much what you see at a curriculum night is in that syllabus, the grading information, the expectation, but also that is the website. So teachers no longer really have a website per se. Canvas is the place for that is their kind of website. When teachers do lessons every week, they post the modules there, the PowerPoints, maybe the assignments. Last year, because of the 2 years ago, I had to do a lot of substituting in classrooms with COVID and such. And it was amazing to walk into a middle school classroom and I'd sit down and say, okay, kids, your teacher wants you to go to your page, Canvas page, and she is posted the assignments, and boom, they pull out their laptops and go there, open that activity, and then I'd walk through what I needed to. But they would just sit down, pull out their laptop, start it up, go to the Canvas site and open the module activity for the day. So students are trained when they're in sixth grade on how to use it. So sometimes parents have anxiety because they're thinking, I don't know how to use Canvas. I don't know how to help my kids, but no worries. It's not about you. It's about your child, and it's about the teacher and the child, make the teacher making sure your child has that ability. So ask your child, like, what is happening in class? Like, how did you get into Canvas? How can we get into Canvas? So things like that. So the teacher is doing that. And in sixth grade, they literally spend the first 3 weeks just onboarding the kids and how to use these things. Like literally, I've seen lesson plans from teachers and how they do that. And I know that because my daughter is in sixth grade this year and I watched that process happen. Also note that in Canvas, families and students have different accounts. So please do not use your child's student Canvas account, okay? It's theirs and you're the parent. And sometimes I'm going to be honest with you, parents use their children's account because they're using their child's password and didn't set up their own account. And that's problematic because students have access and you would get access to class roster, student discussions and so forth, which is not acceptable because that is privacy issues. And so we ask parents not to use their child's account. Students also use Canvas daily, as I said, to look at assignments, projects, and submitting assignments. That's one of the big deals. Teachers will show your child how to do it, but children very often have to submit the assignment using Canvas. Teachers will grade assignments and then they post the grades in Canvas. And then families will get information and can check. There are many ways it can be a passive thing where you just wait and get the emails with all this information, or you can log in and check. I will, by the way, be doing a Canvas workshop for parents in September to walk you through this whole process. Students learn how to use it, but families, very often, sometimes schools also offer little mini lessons at the school to help the families learn how to use Canvas. So there'll be multiple ways that you will learn how to use Canvas, but for your child, do not worry. That for sure, they will get that help from in class. The biggest thing for you for Canvas is I would recommend that you monitor your child's progress in Canvas. And the best way to do that, honestly, is when they come home to sit with them while they open their Canvas and say, hey, let's look at your assignment. Let's look at your grades. I always hear of parents who look at kids' grades on Canvas, take screenshots and send it to the kids and say, you're getting a D, your assignment is missing. Sometimes sitting down with your child and saying, hey, what do you have? Show me. Building that in sixth grade is really helpful because then you are also able to see what they're doing, and then they can be the teacher and say, look at what I can do. But you're also monitoring, but kind of sideways partnering with them rather than oversight, because that sometimes in middle school there can be clashes with that. So Laura?
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else needs to move around a little bit. Go for it. It's a good chance for a little bit of a movement break. The role of a school counselor. So if your student is currently in an ISD elementary school, then they are going to have a school counselor at their elementary as well. And so in the middle schools, every middle school right now has two school counselors, and we usually split that. I think every middle school splits it by alphabet, by the last name. So for example, for PCMS, I work with students and families whose last names start with A through K. And then my counterpart does the end of the alphabet. And we are really kind of the best point of contact, as Lorna mentioned earlier, for general support. So, and I would specify that in terms of, you're starting to notice signs in your student that you're really worried about. They don't seem like themselves. They have some red flags and you're just kind of not sure what to do. Then we would be somebody at school that you could talk to. Let's say you have your student evaluated for some kind of diagnosis outside of school and you want to communicate with the school about that, then the school counselor is your point of contact. If you have a concern about a particular class and how your student is doing in that class, then that classroom teacher is going to be your point of contact. So we're kind of like the overarching umbrella. And we can also certainly be a liaison with teachers. We can help set up meetings with teachers if we just all kind of need to get on the same page. That's a big part of our job. So overall, our role is to help in kind of three main areas. So that would be academics, social emotional, and then career orientation as well. And so with academic counseling, that's when we're talking with students and families about what courses to take, what pathways make sense as they get into 8th grade and are planning for high school. How do we plan for high school? We do a lot of, changing schedules if a student is placed in the wrong class, things along those lines. We also are the point of contact for things like financial assistance, basic needs. Most every middle school has some sort of like angel network or angel fund, something that can help support families in need. And so starting with your counselor for those kinds of things is always a good place to start. With social emotional, so this is the bulk of what we do, especially in middle school. And I love this kind of first point on there. It's not a stigma to talk to us. If your student says to you, oh, I went and talked to my school counselor today, that is not a bad thing. That is a very, very, very good thing. We want our students to be reaching out to us. Even if it's just a question about a class or how to talk to a teacher, or if they are really struggling and they needed somebody to talk to and they reach out to us, like that is a good thing. It does not mean they're in trouble, does not mean something's going wrong. We are a good support for them at school. We talk about all sorts of things. Like I said, it could be academic, or it could be a social interaction with a friend that didn't go well. It could be they're being bullied or harassed by somebody and they need to report it. It could be they're having issues with a coach or issues with a teacher. Like we kind of are here for students to talk to with anything that's getting in their way of being successful at school. And we kind of have open door policies. We talk to students about how they can make appointments with us, and every school is a little different in how they do that, but they always have access to us. A lot of students will reach out over Canvas as they learn how to use it, and can send us emails that way. So we're generally kind of there for students when they really just kind of need that extra support. We also connect students with mental health resources. So we have school-based mental health counselors that are contracted with Swedish in buildings. So we help facilitate student connections to those mental health therapists. The difference is that they are therapists and we are school counselors. And so they can provide therapy for a longer period of time during the school day and for a longer period, where as counselors, we kind of deal with the issues in the moment and then can refer out for more needed therapy going forward if that's what's needed. And I also really want to clarify too, when we talk with students, our conversations are confidential. Sometimes we'll have parents say, can you please check in with my student and then tell me, what they said, or a student's worried that what we're going to talk about, we're going to turn around and go tell their parents. And this is a hard one for parents. And I'm a parent too, so I get it. To kind of get your heads around that we really need to be the safe place for students. And so we're not always going to tell you what we talk about. The only times that we're going to reach out to parents are if there's a safety concern. So if it comes to suicide ideation, self-harm, abuse, those are the things that we would reach out to a parent about. Or if the student agrees with what we can share, then we're going to reach out to you about that as well. So that confidentiality piece is really important for parents to know in terms of what our role is and what we're allowed to share and what we'll keep confidential with the student. And then last but not least, I think this is fairly well known, but I'm glad it's here as well. Even before COVID, we had a rise in anxiety and depression. That was kind of the main thing that we had students seeking support for. And now it's kind of tenfold after COVID too. So especially in our area, when it comes to course selection, when it comes to thinking about trying to get into college, like our area in particular in Issaquah, has a lot of high pressure and a lot of high achievement and a lot of, well, my friend's doing this or my sister did this, so I need to do this too. I need to be on the advanced track. And a lot of that is weighing heavily on students. And so as we start to talk about course selection and what that looks like, really trying to keep in mind your student and what they need and what their strengths are and what their challenges are. Is going to be really, really important to helping them be happy and healthy through middle school and learning those habits that are going to help them be successful as they go into high school as well. We can move on. Okay, so I already kind of jumped ahead and talked a little bit about this. So 2 counselors at each building. There is a caseload that we each have. We do stay, your student will stay with the same counselor all 3 years. They can request to see us a few different ways. And then the social emotional learning, a lot of this is happening in homeroom. And so second step is one of the main curriculums that we use to help help teach students skills around things like bullying. How do you deal with harassment? How are we kind to each other? How can we be accepting? How can we take different perspectives? So that's something that the district has decided on, that's our social emotional learning curriculum that we offer to students. There's also a lot of social emotional resources for families through second step. And then I briefly mentioned those Swedish mental health counselors. That is a great resource that every middle school has to be able to provide some of that longer term therapy and be able to do a little bit more in depth with students that we as school counselors aren't able to do. For resources for outside of school. So sometimes a lot of families are looking for therapists outside of school. Our Swedish counselors can help connect families with that. And we have a great student well-being website too that has a lot of those resources as well.
And that website, Care Solace, if you looked at my email to you with the links, the very bottom of my email, on my signature, I had the link for that. Also, just a reminder that through course selection, sometimes parents want to ask questions or get help, counseling, academic counseling from the counselor. And the middle school counselors, you will start talking to them in September. And if you have any questions about course placement, course selection, and so forth, your teacher and your school counselor this year would be the person to contact and talk to.
One thing just to clarify, I had a question in here. I'm glad this was asked. So for the, I want to back up. So if a student asks to come see us as a school counselor, like I mentioned, we don't always notify parents, hey, I saw your student today. That doesn't happen unless there's a specific reason we need to reach out. For the Swedish mental health counselors, if a student is referred to them kind of by us, it goes one of 2 ways. If a student is 13 or over, then we and the Swedish mental health counselor don't have to contact parents because students legally have their mental health falls under their medical rights at that point. However, if they are under 13, then parents do need to sign off and give their permission for a student to see the Swedish mental health counselor. So 13 and over really is the cutoff for that parent permission when it comes to the Swedish mental health counselors.
So next, for homework. So starting in 6th grade, students, thank you so much. Laura, do you want to take the slide on homework?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. Because this is a big one. And this is one that we get a lot of questions on when we do our 5th grade transitions with the actual students. This is a big one they ask about is homework. So every teacher is required to post their syllabus on their Canvas page. And so that's going to give a lot of information about what the homework expectations are, how they're going to turn things in, everything that kind of goes along with that class and for the homework. I would say in 6th grade, most of the homework is going to be in math, as it says there, and science. And then you're going to have likely reading for language arts, and then more long-term kind of projects that they may need to do at home in social studies. So daily homework is definitely going to be math most of the time. The amount of homework depends excuse me, on the teacher. Generally, kind of what we say in our building is that about a 10 minutes per class per day is kind of a good average to be ready for. But again, depending on how much they get done at school, if they have time in class, then maybe they don't have any to bring home. It just kind of depends on the student and the teacher. Assignments and due dates are posted in Canvas. That is like bold highlight, like red flashing lights. Like that is where students and families are going to know when is it due, what is the assignment, and it's probably going to be where they submit the assignment as well, oftentimes. So that is going to be the place to know when things are due. Many teachers also put it on their whiteboards, or like kind of on like when they're in class, they go over it with their students, especially in 6th grade. So there's multiple places where students are knowing when to turn things in. As Lorna mentioned, grades are frequently updated on Canvas as things are getting graded. So that's going to be the one that updates more so than Family Access. Yeah, and just Canvas is it. That is the best way to know what is going on. When students miss school, they will miss work. And so they have as many days as they missed in order to make it up. So if they miss one day, then they have one extra day to turn it in. But it is expected that they make it up. Sometimes teachers, I don't see this as much in 6th grade, but sometimes teachers will have something where they have like a tardy slip they need to sign off, or some document that they need to do in addition to turning in something late. So if a student was there and they're turning in something late, they might have a little bit of extra effort that they need to put in to show the teacher that they've put in that effort to turn it in. Some homework is graded, others marked for completion, and it depends on the assignment and teacher decision. This one is big. So depending on the middle school and the grading practices, a lot of assignments might not be worth a lot of points, or that category might be weighted differently. So when I know in our school, assessments, things that are considered assessments, are weighted a bit more heavily than just daily homework. So that is going to be something to kind of see. And each teacher has a breakdown in their grades in their Canvas page of how much assignments are weighted and how much our assessments are weighted. So that is a big transition for students and for families, because students will say, well, it's not graded, or it doesn't count against my grade, so I'm not going to do it. And this is kind of a little bit of the battle of helping students get into the habits of middle school, so that they can have those skills, so that they can do well on the test. Because if they're not doing the homework, they're likely not going to do well on the test that is going to be graded and be a big part of their overall grade. Lorna, I'm sure there's things you want to add.
I do, and the main one is absences. So from 5th grade to 6th grade, as a teacher, one of the biggest problems I had with kids would be absent, and they'd be very passive, and they would just come back and they'd kind of go on and, not realize like, hey, you are absent. You had this assignment that you need to do. Or maybe they missed an entire lesson, and now they don't understand that concept. So they have to figure out how to catch up with that concept and that learning. So they have to kind of check in. So in elementary school, very often a teacher might use recess, or they find time somewhere in the middle of the day to kind of catch up with that. In middle school, they really don't have that. Also, if they're sick for 2 or 3 days, that's hard, because then the expectation is the child is going on their own on Canvas and noting what the assignment was and all of that. So when they go back, the teacher might not be there. Hey, you were absent 2 days. This is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. Sometimes it's the student responsibility to kind of check Canvas, check with the teacher, or make sure they submit their assignment. The other big one is sometimes for long absences, when they have been gone, or if they want to travel, parents want to ask the teacher for all of the work that they're going to miss ahead of time, and that doesn't happen. So the teacher is going to say, as you're absent, just check on Canvas to figure out what your child has missed. So there are times where the teachers stay after school. I know as a science teacher, I did once a week, I'd stay after school to make up for labs, because students sometimes have to make up a lab and collect the data. And if they can't, sometimes the teacher might share the results and the student will have to do a lab write-up on their own. So missing school, again, it becomes a big deal. But again, this is teaching students. So you can support your child when they're absent. and how to go into Canvas and look for work that's that they were missing, because it becomes even more critical when they're in high school, where the teacher is not kind of running after them to help them and make sure that they're catching up on their missed work. So this is a good skill. That's why it's called the transition, right? The elementary to high school, middle school is a transition year to get those kids to learn those skills to be independent. So required classes in sixth grade. So in sixth grade, all students will be taking language arts, social studies, math, and science, and also a PE health, 2 trimesters of PE, 1 trimester of health. They'll have their homeroom class. And then students will have an elective class, and that elective class can be band, chorus, orchestra, which are year-long electives, and other elective-based middle schools, and different middle schools have different options. Students who are in the middle school MLL program, they will usually take MLL as a class instead of an elective class. So what that looks like, and this is a planning worksheet, it's brand new. You don't have access to it right now because the district is just tweaking and finalizing this as a draft. But this what you're looking at right now is going to be on the website, the district website, and accessible to you as families starting January 31st. But this is what your child's schedule is going to look like in sixth grade, seventh grade, and eighth grade. You can see that there's an asterisk next to some classes, and that's because for those classes, the students have choice. And this is where that accelerated advanced concept comes into play. So for certain classes, there are choices, and they can take the regular pathway one or kind of an advanced or the advanced pathway. Laura, why don't you go ahead and take this?
Yeah, so this is, I just want to be really clear because this is a lot of information and there's no expectation that you come away from this knowing exactly what you should be doing. This is information that will be gone over specifically at the fifth grade parent nights in the upcoming weeks. So I would definitely, again, encourage you to go to those because that's when this stuff is going to be gone over more specifically. But in a few weeks and in February is when families and students will be choosing what their classes will be for their sixth grade year. We are a self-select district, so that means each family has a choice, and it's not like the school isn't going to come back and say, or we aren't going to come back and say, you can't do that. We're going to move your student to this class instead. These are all recommendations, but we would really, really encourage you to really look again at your specific student, not what anybody else's did, not what their sibling has done. Your student, their SBA grades, their iReady scores, feedback from their current teachers to assess what pathway is really going to help them be successful. Really, really important is math and science pathways. Because once you start on those, you are locked into them, and it does affect their high school, like what pathway they start in high school as a ninth grader. Trust me, I know how insane it is that you are having a fifth grade student and you are having to think about how the next 3 years are going to affect them in high school. It drives me insane, but that is where we are. So I recognize that that is a really, that is an impactful decision. What I'm going to say sorry, Lorna, go ahead.
I was also going to say is our intention is not to repeat ourselves because you're going to hear a lot of this information in sixth grade. But the reason we put this information in today's presentation for families new to the United States is because we know that in India, China, Japan, Korea, sometimes students don't have class options. So having to choose which kind of class becomes scary because very often there's a pathway that they're in other countries, or parents themselves did not have choices in which pathway to choose. They just want, the main goal was to take one of the best classes, get the best grade so that you could do the best. So this whole concept of class choice and class selection is very new to many families. So we wanted to give families some time to process this. And we are not expecting you to understand all of this. The main idea is it is self-select. There's a lot of information that's on the website. The school is also going to be sending out a report card with all of your children's iReady scores that will be you can use, because there's recommendation on looking at the iReady scores, the math and English language arts, reading scores, and using that information to choose what class to give to have your child in. And also, as it says here, talk to your student, because that's the person who is going to be sacrificing or doing that work. Because what kind of a child do you have? They are really self-motivated, or do you have to remind them and push them to be doing their work? Because taking these advanced classes now in middle school impacts them in high school, because then these accelerated classes in their freshman and sophomore year. So one of the things in the United States is we love the fact that students have so many options and so many choices, and that is part of the American school system. So note that we have that coming up. And so when you have tons of accelerated classes in the freshman and sophomore year, students sometimes are not ready for that. They start getting really stressed out. As Laura said, that there's a huge rise in anxiety and depression. So note that it impacts their sports, music, and club. And so I have experienced a lot of families who are coming from outside the United States asking this question a lot. That's why we focus on it. Okay. But note that this is also going to be covered at the high school. But this is the two pathways for science. And so note, if you take science pathway 2, you are skipping life science. So the child is going to take biology without having had life science. And then people had asked. And the other thing I want to show is you do not know, and I'm not going to go over this information, but what I want you to know is this information is going to be available on the website starting at the end of this month. So I'm going to make sure you have that link next week. When you fill out your feedback form, I'll include that link for you. I'll send that link to you next week. And then you will have that week to look at that link to make these decisions. And then the high school will talk more. You will be able to ask educated questions, knowing what to expect. Because the feedback I got and the reason why we do this event is parents say they go to the middle school presentation, and they're so overwhelmed because they're getting so much information. So now we have this information night that you're overwhelmed and getting so much information. But this is just to kind of set the stage to help you get some information to digest it slowly, so that when you get to the middle school information night, you're more prepared to digest, to take it in and ask questions. So know that this information is there, that there are advanced middle school classes, and we also give you guidance. A lot of guidance will be given to you. As Laura said, it feels overwhelming. You're scared that you're making the wrong decision that's going to impact your child in high school and potentially college. So we give you a lot of guidance to make this mistake. To make this choices, not mistake, which sometimes may feel like mistakes, but to give you this guidance, because choosing the classes is important. And honestly, for me, the main importance is to make sure your child is not stressed out, because my biggest concern is anxiety and depression that we see in students in high school and also in college. Laura?
Yeah, so I think just along those lines, like Lorna said, she's going to send out the link to what is new for us this year, but it's called the Middle School Course Guide. So it's listing all the learning recommendations. It's learning all the descriptions of the different classes, and a lot of those questions that we get are around advanced pathways. So as you can see, kind of on this screen, you can see the different ways that students can potentially advance. The two areas, again, that I want you to be really thoughtful about and to spend time in this course guide when you get that link is for math and science. Lorna, can you go back to the next one? Sorry, just because, yeah. So what I learned
picture for math, if you just want to look at that too. And it's very scary. So I want you to know, don't be scared of it. There's a lot of information on the website so that you can read through and spend time. It has learning, it has guidance on what scores on the iReady to take. You're going to get the report of the other child's iReady score emailed to you with their scores to help you decide which one of these classes to take. And so there is guidance. Go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, yes, there will be. There's going to be lots of learning recommendations. The one thing that I really actually just learned today is that students who, can you go back a slide? Yeah. So students who take that sixth grade advanced science pathway. So you can see earth and space science, and then physical science and biology. That puts them in chemistry as a ninth grader. But what they are finding is that students who are the most successful or who are doing well in chemistry are students who have actually gone all the way through geometry. And that doesn't line up with the advanced math pathway generally. Because generally they're in geometry and chemistry at the same time. So it's really important to choose the right pathway in science that's going to align with their math pathway as well. Because if they aren't being successful in biology as an eighth grader and they're not being successful in math, they're just going to have to be retaking classes they've already taken because they're not in ninth grade, because they're not ready for the advanced classes yet. And that's when credits are starting to count towards GPA. So that's something that the science teachers will clarify more at the fifth grade parent nights. But just to kind of put that bug in your ear of being really thoughtful and looking about how the science and the math line up, because they do closely align. And it's not just like advancing almost at one level, it's almost being successful at 2 grade levels ahead. That is what those advanced pathways look like when they get to high school. So I know that part's a lot, but the math and science are the closest, or the ones to pay the most attention to when it's looking at those learning recommendations and student interest too. You know, if your kid doesn't love math and it's really hard for them, the advanced pathway might not be the right thing for them and that's okay. That's okay. That's so foundational. They're going to need the foundation to be successful going forward. So if they're anything like me, don't put them in the advanced pathway, and then you can just talk for a living and it's great.
A couple things a parent asked, can they change midstream? And the thing is, it's really hard. So for example, I used to teach life science and earth science for students, and I had a couple kids who are doing really poorly, which is a C, because sixth grade it's really hard to get a D or F, but sometimes they do. But they were doing poorly, they were not doing as well, but they were in the path 2, and there was really nothing for them till they got into high school. So they had to stay in that path 2, because the only way to get out of it is if they were taking earth science in sixth grade, they would have to retake earth science in seventh grade, right? They don't allow the seventh graders to take life science. So usually they would kind of stay through it, and sometimes they would struggle through, get low grades in biology, and sometimes kids could retake biology in ninth grade, or after taking biology in ninth grade, they would instead of taking chemistry because they were not ready for it, they would take a material science course or chem phys course or a different course. So then they were basically holding for a year so that the child was more prepared to go into those advanced classes. So that's not to say students can do it. We're just noticing that for some kids, it's definitely a struggle. And so just because your child does well in math and science, it's also how advanced they are. I'm going to tell you, I started teaching. I've been teaching, as you know, in the district for 23 years. But when they began this pathway thing, my department, our departments, and all the science teachers fought it a lot because the biology books are written at the 10th grade level. And so students are reading in eighth grade are reading biology books written for 10th grade students. And so it is a very challenging course. Even ninth graders struggle with it. And so just keep those factors in mind. So one of the things we also know is many parents really want the best for their children. And I know coming from India, we were always on a pathway to go into the highest level math and science careers and classes. And so just be aware that ninth grade biology in the Issaquah School District is advanced already, like flat out in other states and in this is amazing that we offer ninth grade biology. So if your child is taking ninth grade biology, this is a good thing. So trying to get them to take it in eighth grade, that's a lot. Also, if you advance your child in math too much, at some schools, you might advance them out of class options, because really you just want them to end with calculus as a senior, AP calculus. And if have already taken your AP calculus classes by 10th or 11th grade, what are your options for your senior year for classes? Because that's what most colleges are looking for. So just keep those kinds of things in mind. But the website is amazing. It has lots of choices, so stay tuned for more information on that. Testing and grading. So a parent asked about the letter grade. So in Canvas, you will get the numbers. So I can see exactly how my child is doing in any given classes based on the letter grade. Like she might have a 98 or a 92 or whatever, but the report card only has the letters. Okay, so numerical is in Canvas along with the letter grade, but the final report card only has the letters. And that's important to know because in high school, and for their transcripts, it's only going to be the letter grade that is used, which then translates to a GPA. In sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, students will be taking an SBA test, which is a Smarter Balance test, just like they do in fifth grade. We no longer will be using 1, 2, 3, 4 in middle schools. And to be considered passing, it's a D. D is passing and F is failing. There is no ranking of students. Students who have certain GPA, they are usually invited to join the Honor Society, but there's no ranking of students. So really, 2 students can have a 4.0 GPA, and one could be in, the life science pathway and the math 1 pathway, and another student can have the same GPA, but the more advanced pathway. So GPA talks about the grades they got. And then in high school, we'll talk more about, as we transition from 8th to 9th grade, about how colleges know about rigor. Students may have projects that they will need to complete either individually or in small groups. And again, a reminder that colleges don't see the middle school grades unless your child is taking high school credit in 8th grade. So certain classes like algebra, geometry, Spanish, biology, French, are all classes that 8th graders can potentially take for high school credit, and they have an option if they wanted to appear in their transcript or not. We'll talk about that at the end of 8th grade, but for the transition night. But those are the only classes that might appear on the transcript because those are high school level classes that they're taking in the middle school. Of course, this is also for geometry if they're taking it at the middle school level. Laura, did you want to add anything else about that?
I don't think so. I think we covered it for grading.
Okay, Ina, do you want to take MLL?
Sure. Okay, so the MLL program you may be familiar with in elementary school is where the ML teacher will come into your child's classroom in what's called a push-in model, and they will come and work with your student either one-on-one or in a small group of other ML students in that classroom, and they will be teaching they will be supporting the students with what the teacher is teaching in the classroom. In middle school, it works so that they have, it's its own class. So it's its own class period. So they have 6 class periods, and one of those will be ML. Unless, of course, they've exited the program in elementary school. But if they have not exited the program, then they will have one class will be their ML class, which unfortunately means that they will not get an elective class. But again, when they exit the program, then they can take electives again. And it's one class, it's taught by one ML teacher. And the way that that one is taught is that they will help the students learn the academic English that they need to support their other classes. So if there's a lot of reading in English and social studies, for example. So this ML class will help them learn the academic English they need to understand the lessons being taught for social studies, or science even has a lot of reading and English. And they use the same testing that they use in elementary school, which is the WIDA assessment. And so those scores determine whether the students can exit the program or not. They look at a threshold for an overall score that's determined from the 4 domains. Again, they're testing the 4 domains, which are reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And if they have a certain overall score, then they can exit the program. The WIDA is administered at the beginning of the year, and then again at the near the end of the year, in the spring. Next slide. Oh, okay, go ahead. You want me to do this, Lorna, or you want to do it?
Yeah, I'm going to just quickly go over that. Attendance. So just remember that attendance is key, and students are accountable for being in class on time and prepared to learn. Students may be subject to consequences, so we do have tardies. Parents will be notified if students are missing any class period, so it's per period. And to participate in any after-school activities, students must attend class for at least one half of the school day, because we have lots of sports, theaters, concerts. Students also typically allowed 1 day for each day of absence for making up work. Laura had just mentioned that for earlier. And just remember, you're all responsible for any makeup work. So a lot of this we already touched base on when we talked about homework. So I'm just going to move on to the next slide. Health room, go ahead, Ina.
So there is a health room in the middle school, just like there is in the elementary school. And there is a full-time nurse and a part-time health room specialist. And they basically protect the student's health. They're going to, if there are medications that need to be administered during the school day, the nurse is the one who will call your student down and administer the medication. If a student is hurt, they fall or they hit their head, something like that, they will go to the health room. You will be notified that something occurred, and then you will be given the option of coming to pick up your child. Of course, if there's vomiting or a fever, you will be called to come and take your child home. So the nurse is the one who's going to, if your child needs an EpiPen, they're going to administer that. You have to make sure that they have a current prescribed EpiPen that they can use. Diabetes medicine, any kind of medication, they need to be have the current prescription for, and they need to be authorized. They are the only ones authorized to administer it if it's during the day. Oh, and there's also you can also go to the nurse through the nurse or the counselor. The nurse has resources that she can support the counselor with, he or she can support the counselor with, as far as food or clothing, any kind of medical needs. The nurse is medical insurance, that kind of thing. So the nurse also has some resources in that area. And they work with the counselors on that. So if you feel more comfortable going to the counselor with those kind of requests or needs, then they can work with the nurse as well.
Thank you. So a big difference from elementary school to secondary schools, middle and high school, is something called ASB, and that is the Associated Student Body. So the activities, the sports in the middle and high school, that money comes from students, and that is a ASB who determines how that money is going to be spent and all. So if your students will have the opportunity to sign up for different clubs and sports, and students are elected to represent grade levels and the group to run this ASB organization to plan and support student engagement on campus. In the registration form, a parent asked about how they can be an ASB, how they can be class president and all of that, and this is part of it. So usually an 8th grader is selected as student body president, and there are student leaders in each homeroom, and 6th grade student body rep and so forth. So there are different elections, and students usually write some kind of a speech, and then they do these elections through their homeroom classes. And that group determines how to spend the money for clubs and to kind of use that ASB money. So where is this money coming from? In the beginning of the year in August, you will have the opportunity to buy an ASB card, and students who are planning on being in sports and in clubs, participating in sports and clubs, that's how they fund that. Okay, so school is sports and clubs are not really free in schools, and because we provide them to pay for them, students usually contribute to this ASB fund, and it's usually $35 for each student per year for that you're going to pay to the school directly, usually in August. And then sports, usually there's also an additional cost per sport to play, but the clubs are usually free with an clubs are free, sorry, not usually with an ASB card. Sometimes there might be a fee if just for supplies or something, but it depends on what it is, and that's usually at the high school. If you need financial aid in middle school, financial aid is available for ASB, for fees for sports and others, and you can talk to your school counselor, or you can talk to the school bookkeeper about this, and they can show you where the financial aid forms are. They're also available online if you need it. So we talked about the ASB fee. The sports fee is usually $50 for junior varsity and $20 for intramural sport. PE uniforms is usually a cost. The yearbook is usually a cost. The science lab fee, students have that fee. There's usually an elective fee, especially for certain classes. And then instrument rental. If you are renting, like my daughter is in orchestra, we rent our violins separately. Some parents just buy one. When my older daughter was in orchestra, we rented a double bass, but she also checked one out through the school because you're not getting a double bass back and forth. And so, depending on what's going on, you might have those fees. Again, financial assistance is available, and you're going to pay most of those fees in August during EVP. Now, the big one, the one that I love the most about middle school, is the clubs. All schools offer a huge variety of after-school clubs, and we strongly recommend your child join one of those clubs, because through those clubs, your child is going to meet so many more friends and classmates and really get to know each other. Because sometimes for some kids, coming together from a different elementary school, they might be looking to make new friends. So the club opportunities vary from each middle school. So we recommend that you go to your school's website, and on the school's website, you're going to find out what the clubs are at that school. Also, during those class announcements, as we talked about, they will make a note, or they will announce that this club starts on this date, like, in September, October, when the clubs start. My daughter is in 3 clubs, and today, for example, her club was in meeting, And so today in school, they announced so-and-so club is not going to be meeting after school. So those are the times where students really need to be paying close attention to the announcements. So they note where the club is meeting or not meeting, or after school buses are canceled. So that leads us to the other big thing on this page, which is after school buses. And that's one of the things I love about middle schools. It gives families the opportunity of having the kids stay after school to participate in sports like volleyball and all of these different sports or clubs and get transportation. Now, the big thing is that bus is not coming to your regular bus stop. It is definitely a much longer walk, sometimes a drive for the parents to pick your child up. But it is going to be something that parents have to, they're going to have to look at that. So, for example, my daughter's bus stop is at our local elementary school. Before it was walkable. So it is not as convenient, but it's still better than, me driving her to an after school sport or a club or something. So there's definitely a little bit more work for after school buses picking up sometimes this year. Parents can donate to ASB. There are also many fundraisers. Schools are always having fundraisers for ASB just because clubs and sports require a lot of money. And, the more ASB funds we have, the more opportunities we can provide to our students. Sports. So the sports being offered, this is what the sports look like right now. And our executive director reminded me that the school district is looking at different sports, and that might change. These might change. We might have more, but stay tuned and look for an email or information on the district e-news about what sports are being offered. But this is what it looks like so far. The big news for sports is students need to have a physical evaluation, a physical from their provider, and that the date on this is wrong. I'm sorry, it's better on the next slide. It's January, okay? And so the evaluations are actually good. The sports evaluation, it has to be done by January 1st to be eligible for the upcoming school year. And so next year, sixth graders should have their physical from now until later. And the suggestion we always have is to have it done sometime in the summer, because you're going to have to put all of this information in something called final forms. And final forms, you're going to upload the physical and answer a lot of these questions about your child's health and confidential information forms and so forth. So final forms in sixth grade, sometime in sixth grade, if your child decides to do cross country or another sport, just keep this in mind to go to the website for sports, and then they will be able to look at final forms there. Each school, by the way, if you want to look at them now, you can. You can go to student life. You can look at activities and athletics. You can see what athletics schedule looks like, what sports are offered, what the eligibility requirements are, including ASB and final forms. There's a Q&A. So you really have from now until August to get to know your child's school by looking at their website. Under activities, you can also see the many activities and clubs that the schools have. Each school, remember, is going to be slightly different. And you can see they have so many clubs in middle schools. The best part of it, though, is that if there's a club that your child wants to be in, for example, Dungeons and Dragons Club, very new this year. If your child is interested in a club, they can always ask and form a new club. And that's at all the schools. It's really impressive and amazing that kids have this opportunity in middle school. And that information is also on the website. And then someone was asking about leadership. That information is also there because they have different leadership. They have a leadership teacher, and that teacher is kind of helps with that ASB group. Student government is what a parent was asking about. How do I help my child get into student government and leadership? That information is also on the school's website under ASB. So while I'm showing Issaquah Middle School's website, Laura will tell you that PCMS site looks very similar to this. All schools' website looks very similar. So just keep that in mind. So advice from previous parents was understand that middle school is a transition year. They are learning how to be organized. Kids are learning how to be organized, develop good studying skills, personal skills. So my main thing is I would help coach your child on how to do it. I'm going to 100% say, as a parent of a sixth grader, she knows nothing on how to study for tests. So in the next 3 years, it's going to be my job to help her study for tests because honestly, in fifth grade, they don't really study for tests. Uh, and then help your child be organized. Strategies for binders, lockers, classroom behavior. Kids, again, fifth grade, no organizational skills at all. In sixth grade, they get a lot of papers, and their binder can be sometimes a paper nightmare. It's the great news is they have less papers nowadays because everything is electronic, but you still have to be organized in that sense because sometimes they're not sure if they turned in the assignments. Some assignments are paper, some assignments are online. So it's an organizational skill. So that's one of the reasons I always recommend that you sit with your child as you're going through Canvas or if they're missing any assignments. So then you can be a teacher to them to help them be organized. Materials management is a huge issue for students. Same thing with time management, help them with when to go to the bathroom. What happens if they've lost something? What happens if they got a 0 because they forgot to turn in an assignment? Do you say, oops, I guess I just am stuck with a 0? What can you do if they've missed an assignment? So your job again is helping and coaching them. Also, what do you do if your child need or you need support and who to talk to? That's a school counselor. So know that while I'm saying this, don't be afraid and think, oh no, I have to like my kid has to do all the talking. I don't have access to these people. You do. But what we're just saying is remember, we're trying to have you coach your child and then you can ask and work with a counselor or teacher. But step one is talking to your child. Even as a teacher, I'm going to honestly tell you, you have no idea the number of times parents would email me and ask me when an assignment was due or how this assignment was supposed to be done or why did their child get a 0. And my thought was, why are you asking me this and not your child, right? So those are the things we're asking you because in elementary school, that might be something that was normal, but in middle school, that is not something that we do. So how do we help that? Using their locker is something that you can be working with your child about. Honestly, if your child will use a locker, is going to be dependent on where their locker is and the school. So, as I said, when my daughter was at one school, she used a locker all the time, and my other child has 4 classes in a portable this year and never uses a locker. And so it's really dependent on the school. Some schools, the kids' classes, their locker, and the locker itself, right, might be close to classes. Other times it's not going to be convenient. Um, Things to also help them is another thing I love about Canvas is this calendar. Teachers post all of the assignments on the calendar. So when we talk about time management strategy, it helps you and your child to help them and teach them to use a calendar and to plan. So teachers very often, I'm going to speak from my experience at my child's school, I get emailed sometimes on big assignments or big test dates, and that's very helpful. But sometimes I have to go into Canvas to find out what those test dates are. So for me, I make sure that I'm not going to do some activity with my child. For example, on Tuesday, she had a big test. So on Monday, I wasn't going to be distracting to her, but I was going to say, hey, can I help you review for this test? Or what have you done? Or do you need some extra time or have questions or tell me more about blah, 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 since I know what her test was about. So how can I help coach her through this? And how can I help make sure she's managing her time and teaching her this? And again, while there are no parent teacher conferences, if we're communicating through your child and you're not getting the information and you need more, you can communicate with your teacher and counselor to get more help. Parents are asking about specific dates. So the registration window will open on February 14th and will close around March 8th. And here we have the dates for all of the events at the different schools. So if you have your phone out, you can take a picture of this or a screenshot of this, but please note that you'll also be getting emails from your child's elementary school with this information. And also just a reminder, if you're in Merlin or in SciTech programs, make note of what your home school is. So you're going to your home school based on your addresses, middle school. And then finally, if you're unsure what school you're going to, remember you can call your elementary school registrar. Your elementary school registrar in Skyward, we have access and we know what the child's feeder pattern looks like. So we can tell where they'll be going in middle and high school. So that was one of the questions I got in the registration is, well, what's next? So what's next is please attend the middle school nights to get that information. After that, based on that information, you're going to go to the school registration, go to, your child will actually have to do this through student access. Your child will be using student access. You're definitely going to be supporting your child through this to register for their classes for middle school. And then after that is the next steps will be in August. And so in August, you'll have the enrollment verification process. It's usually the second week of August. If your child is going to do sports, please remember to finish and get that physical. I know I forgot. And then in September, I was like, oops, I tell all parents to do this. And here am I forgetting to do their physical so they can do final forms and get into the sports. Also, things to note is very often schools have back to school events or something in end of August. And so just looking to see if your school has any activities. Possible events could be a web event where everyone belongs, maybe a locker assignment, or maybe they send an email for picking up school uniform or something. So it's usually that week right before school begins. Next year, school starts on a Thursday, so things are going to be a little bit off. So just check communication. So that's really what I'm saying. In August, be sure you're watching for district school emails to let you know what the next steps are. If you have to change schools in the middle of the school year, please note that the information, even if it's out of district, the school registrar really sends all of that information to the other school. So if it's within the school district, it's really seamless, right? Because they'll know how to use Canvas. They already have the Canvas accounts and the school link accounts and their Office 365 accounts, everything. So if it's within the school transfer, pretty seamless. If it's outside the school district, of course, systems, everything is going to be different, but the school will send that information to them. So for the visits, I think I missed the question. So for the school visits, there's a day where just the fifth graders go by themselves with their classmates. And then there's another day where the parents go. So the parents go is a different date. Okay, and
Lauren,
Laura, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, can I jump in on this? I just want to be really clear because I just put it in the chat too, but yes, the fifth graders come to the school themselves with their teacher, with the buses. Parents don't need to worry about any transportation for that unless your student is in SciTech or Merlin and you want your student to come to their home middle school, then parents would be responsible for transportation for that, I believe. So check with your student's teacher on that. But generally, parents don't need to worry about any transportation or anything like that for the school day visit. But then the parent night, and I would say parent night versus family night, because students, I think it's mainly for parents because students will have already been. And so, for example, for us and Pine Lake and Beaver Lake, we're all doing that on the same day. So the fifth graders will come during the day and then we'll see the parents that night. So just, it's really important to be checking the weekly bulletins that are coming out from your elementary school and the information that's going to come out from the middle schools as well with that information. And I know for us, for PCMS, if you're one of our feeder schools, we are also doing a fifth grade parent Q&A on Zoom later that same week. And so we'll put that out. But our end date for PCMS is actually March 1st, not the 8th. So just be checking what your middle school information is on that.
And then let's see. So we did that. We did this. Okay, and questions and QR code. Would you mind putting the feedback form in that chat yet? So we are at the end of our formal presentation. This is my last slide. So I would recommend that you complete my feedback form, because honestly, the main thing you're going to get is me sending you a follow-up email with a slide deck and a video and the video link. And if you don't complete it, it's still fine. You can go to my webpage, our webpage, and look for it sometime next week. But I'll also follow up next week with the link for the course guide and course selection, so I can then use that feedback form to communicate with you and answer any questions that you have. And you also have a place in the feedback form to ask questions as needed. I also have a couple questions so Ina will post the feedback form as she has already done. So are students allowed to end the family night? One second.
Attend.
I'm going to actually stop recording for this part.